Hi, everybody. We are here today in our session to talk about why return to the office, the future of the workplace. And I have the pleasure today to introduce three speakers. The first being Chris Konski, who's the Senior Regional Advisor, Change Management, Accommodations, and Portfolio Management for the Western Region of Public Services and Procurement Canada. Chris has been with the Federal Public Service for over 31 years and with PSPC for the last 16. A seasoned communications practitioner within the Government of Canada, Chris found his way into the world of change management. Having recently overseen the change management program for 3 of PSPC's regional workplace modernization projects, Chris has a wealth of experience in working with client groups, engaging employees, managing resistance, and coaching leaders with change. Currently, Chris is providing leadership and guidance to the Western Region Accommodations team, working with Government of Canada departments and agencies implementing the GC Workplace Modernization Program, supporting activity-based workplaces by developing and delivering change management strategies and activities. I also have the pleasure of introducing Mary Sorensen, who's Principal of Global Workplace Strategy at Stantec. Mary is driven by the belief that the built environment has a profound impact on individuals, communities, and systems. It's what drew her to architecture in the first place. Centered at the intersection of these ideas, she works with clients to define clear workplace design solutions that deliver positive change for individuals and their teams, while still aligning with enterprise-level business strategies and organizational culture. In her diverse 20-year career, Mary has worked across a variety of sectors, including technology, higher education, healthcare, and public utilities. She has led research initiatives and established project design principles, guidelines, and standards, and change management programs. These efforts are grounded in the human-centered approach, knowing that optimizing for the employee experience elevates the overall effectiveness of the organization. While she's not busy advancing the workplace sector, she's making the most of what Utah has to offer, taking advantage of world-famous ski slopes. And we'll also be introducing Sonia Norton, who's Associate of Interior Design, also at Stantec. A curious nature drives Sonia's enthusiasm to understand the relationship between people and their environment. As an award-winning registered interior designer with over 19 years of experience, Sonia knows how to achieve what her client wants. Using evidence that codifies the relationship, Sonia has worked with clients from a variety of sectors to transition a traditional workplace into an activity-based workplace. She has led engagement sessions, focus groups, and collected survey data to help clients determine business goals, strategic plans, current program, future space requirements, space standards, planning principles, and the functional relationship of the spaces within. Using the process of enhanced visioning and engagement, she has successfully consolidated multiple working groups into one space. By helping users understand how they work, she has optimized the workplace environment, increased space utilization, reduced leasing costs, and met the client's long-term strategic goals. Sonia is always excited to work with users to understand the why behind the detailed qualitative and quantitative questions to help clients plan for the future. She brings energy to the engagement process and enjoys facilitating the collaboration between the owner's representative, user groups, and the change management team. Her human-centered approach encourages users to engage, collaborate, and discuss their needs and wants. She has led multiple user groups through the engagement process, gleaning information from clients to develop the vision, define the functional program, and create a critical path. Sonia aims to understand the causal relationships between people and their environment in such detail that the pathway for change is both stimulating and enjoyable. And with that, I will turn it over to the three of you. I'm very much looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you very much. Firstly, we are going to look at the Stantec issued survey. Mary, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, happily. So, when we all began this global work from home hybrid workplace experiment about more than a year now, Stantec we put together and issued a survey to both our clients, but then it launched it also in social media. So it got quite a broad representation of asking people, how this was working and how it was changing what they might look for from the office in the future, assuming, that we would be returning. And so today we want to share some of that with you, as well as some third-party research to think about now that we've been existing in this hybrid world for a while. What should we be thinking about in terms of creating an office for the future?
So firstly, we would like you to poll you guys as well. So if you guys can take out your phones and type in menti.com onto your phones, there's a passcode here, and it'll bring you into a little survey that we're doing. So just take a moment to do that. And I'll load up the survey results so you guys can see it live. Maybe what I'll do is I'll bring us back to the PowerPoint so you have that code.
So one of the things we're hoping to do with this is sort of get your take on where we are and compare that. We've been gathering this data when we first launched it, and then as we've used it with clients, we've begun to sort of update. And people's attitudes have certainly changed a bit over time. Okay. This is really great.
Yeah, lots of engagement. Thanks everybody who's taking part. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that this is a live survey. We're going to be asking a couple more questions throughout the presentation. No need to log off when you're done. It'll automatically prompt you as we go through the presentation.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. So what do you guys think?
I think it's very consistent. So if you look at the next slide, what do we see here? Only 2% of those responding are thinking that they won't be working from home or outside the office in the future. And what we found is very consistent. 96% of people we've talked to said, yeah, I intend to continue working outside of the office at least some point at some amount of time during the week. And so when we know that we've been very effective and pivoted so quickly to continue to work in this new manner, you kind of ask the question, is the office even relevant? There's been plenty of forecasting that leases will contract considerably as companies don't need an office for their workers. But we would say, what, absolutely the office is relevant, because the same people are telling us, respondents are telling us that 90% of them, they're looking forward to going back to the office at some point here. And why? What do they want when they get there? We are missing that face-to-face collaboration. We know we can do this, but we know it's just not the same intuitively, right? And then there's also that social aspect of being with your colleagues, and that has value.
So next, we want you to go back to your phone, and we want to ask you, what is critical to your organization's success? So again, if you have lost the code, we've got it up on the screen again here for you. We'll just take a moment to leave that for you. And once we start getting some responses on the next slide, then we will show you what they look like.
Yeah, so these are factors or considerations for organization success. And if you take a minute to just sort of rank where you think your employer, your team, your organization, what drives its success. And I think on the screen, it'll have a menu. It'll give you all 6 options. Pick one. The next one will give you 5, 4, 3, 2. So if you just give it a little bit of time to think about that.
It's very consistent with the Blue Sky study.
Yeah, I'm looking at digital tools and communication, sort of duking it out there for a second.
Yeah. So we had about 70 respondents on the last one. I don't know if we want to wait. We've got about
Well,
47 at this point. Let's see if we can, how fast we get everybody's engagement.
yeah, and I think if we do move ahead, Sonia, and keep talking, people can continue to think about that, and the results I think are will stay in Mentimeter if you want to go back and check them.
Okay.
But like Sonia said, you know, we have been engaging with our clients to talk about this, and this is results that when we talk to individual contributors in an organization, mid-managers and senior managers, what we see consistently is communication and collaboration. Now, mid-managers, you might think, yeah, they're looking at the engagement and the collaboration within their teams. Senior managers are like, no, we've got to keep the broader organization tied together here. And what's interesting is to see that individual contributors over the past year, they're really focused on that talent development. They're looking for mentorship and they're looking to grow their career. And that's really top of mind. The other thing that I want to point out on this, and I didn't notice on our Mentimeter, consistently, individual excellence ranks the lowest in terms of what they think drives individual success. So we're better together, I think, is sort of the key message here.
So let's just move back. We've got 100 responses this time. So communication and collaborations within the department is first on the list right now. That's pretty interesting.
And, you know, that digital tools, we really have heard and seen how that goes hand in hand. And as we come back and as we evolve the workplace, we really have to create easy, reliable, consistent tools to stay connected when we have colleagues out of the office. So that individual excellence point is really interesting, because when we ask, what do you do in your day? How is your work balanced between focus and collaboration? As individuals, we really see that we have a responsibility on both sides of that equation. But again, when we look at what drives our company, what do you think your company success is driven by? It's collaboration. So we really have to look at this balance of meeting employee needs and meeting and supporting organizational objectives and that organizational excellence.
And I think on the next slide, as we look at that, we're looking at finding a goal that we're all working towards post-pandemic. Is finding that right balance of what the employees' needs and wants are with the employer's operational requirements are. So employee engagement is critical as we have the time now, as we are slowly returning to the workplace for most people. What does that look like, and how are we going to engage staff going forward? So we pose to you to take back and ask the questions to your employees. So employers need to go back and ask questions of, what did you like about the work environment pre-pandemic that you want to continue post-pandemic? What did you like about the work during pandemic? And what do you want to carry forward post-pandemic? On the flip side of that same coin is, what didn't you like about both of those experiences that you don't want to see happen as we return to the workplace? So what new elements of working remotely did you like? Which of those elements do you want to see continue? And really helping to define what that post-pandemic work experience looks like. Leaders need to identify within their organizations what kind of organization, what kind of culture they want to create in this post-pandemic environment. We've got an opportunity to define a new culture in the way that we work. So what innovations have been implemented during the pandemic that we want to continue on with? What do leaders in the new work environment have to do to create a new culture? Do we want to have a do's and don'ts, can and can'ts list of things that are allowed to be done in an office? Or do we want to turn that back over to employees and let them define what that workplace looks like? So in the end, it's finding, again, that right balance of employees' needs and organizational needs, and working in an environment that makes both successful.
Great. And so when we think about where we're going, it's interesting to look at where we've been in terms of the workplace. And you know, that first workplace when we left the farm and came to the cities to go to work, it was factory centered, right? So it was productivity. I went to this location to make things, to make my contribution to a physical product, and I was rewarded on productivity. How efficient could I be, and how quickly and how many things could I do? But as we've moved forward into the era of the knowledge worker, it's really not as driven by our individual work. We just heard this. There's a lot of focus on our collaboration. So Sonia, if you can go to the next slide. Really the idea here being we still have been coming to the office, but what we do there has changed considerably. And how we succeed is really driven by overall effectiveness, not necessarily productivity. How effectively do we work with our colleagues to drive it towards a shared goal? And so when we think about how have we evolved this environment, this space in which we do this work, it's really interesting to see that. If you'll go to the next slide, Sonia, in some ways you can see it hasn't changed that much. This principle of productivity has still been there. And it's interesting to note that, you know, technology has allowed some of the portability or the mobility that we've experienced in the last year. Pre-pandemic, we knew that. Maybe our management and our organizations didn't really embrace it as much, but it's really important to know 74% of employees surveyed prior to the pandemic would have taken a different job just for the benefit of flexibility of where they work. And so if we think back to what people want out of the workplace, what they're looking forward to coming back to, I think we've definitely seen that technology can effectively bridge a gap, but there are elements of our human condition that it doesn't meet. And so, you know, we need to find the balance between those two things.
Exactly. So how can we consider increased collaboration and engagement? We have all these new technologies in hand, literally, and there's lots of talk about getting back to normal. But the truth is, I think we're never going to work the same. Being forced to work in isolation for the last 18 months has driven the desire for us to rebuild community that we lost through the pandemic. So while this hybrid model honors a good work-life balance, everybody was really excited to continue working from home. We know that the reason people want to return to the office is for collaboration and engagement. They want to engage with their professional communities. So it's time to consider how co-location within the office can foster the creative and collaborative spirit.
Yeah, and I think if you go back to, you know, that first thing, what are people looking forward to? That social component was really big. And, you know, you might ask, is it really responsible or a good investment to create a place for people to socialize? Don't we come to work? It's very important to recognize that those social connections really foster engagement and make us feel part of something bigger than our own individual work. This is a slide that represents data from Boston Consulting Group, and they did a global survey during this pandemic and asked people, how connected do you still feel with your colleagues, and how productive do you feel? How effectively are you collaborating on tasks? And there was a direct correlation between those who said that they were not satisfied with that connectivity. They were 80% more likely to say that they were feeling less effective in their jobs. So staying connected helps us get our work done together.
So let's talk about how scheduled our lives have become since the pandemic. The virtual scheduled meetings, back-to-back meetings, no time to take a break. This is impacting our ability to spark creativity and innovation. We know that those unplanned interactions and the casual collisions that happened when we were working in the office are lost in today's virtual world. So these accidental collisions, they create serendipity. It's an opportunity to spark a new idea leading to innovation and productivity. You get to learn what your other colleagues are working on that you might not be involved with, thinking new ideas of how you guys can interact. So this plays a key role in workplace satisfaction. When we're able to innovate, this leads to surprisingly impactful results that profit not only the employees, but the employer. As a creator of these kinds of spaces, I'm deeply interested in the value that this casual collision brings within the workplace. So what we want to do is create opportunities for innovation through experiential design when we're designing the offices. And this gives justification to invest in the employee experience. As you can see, a beautiful office is very exciting. Also, personally, bumping into people throughout the office on a day-to-day basis offers a chance to share a laugh, we can connect, and it provides a sense of well-being, especially when we're working in a big corporation or organization.
Yeah, I think there's definitely metrics out there that support that. And one of the other things that feels a little bit, more tangible is we're working to get things done. It turns out that we're actually faster when we're together. So what this chart is showing is something that was established at MIT, and that's about the 70s, something called the Allen curve. And they basically measured and demonstrated that we communicate more when we're closer together. Distance, seems to slow down communication. We communicate less. Well, that was the 70s. And with all of the technology that we have to bridge that physical divide, could that possibly still be the case? And so MIT looked at this, and they found that, the Allen curve holds. Out of sight, we fall out of sync. And so even when we're together face to face, we use technology, email, to communicate more often than when we're distanced. And the other is that face-to-face communication. Obviously, the further apart we are, the less frequently we're going to do that. But what's most important to recognize here, so being together just increases the amount of communication that we have. Why is that important? We get things done faster. I don't know if you can think about it anecdotally, but it's so much quicker to ask that question in the moment, maybe when there are 3 people there, than to start the email chain of discussion and debate. And that asynchronous communication, where I send the message out, but I have to wait a certain amount of time for somebody to see it and respond to it. It's sort of logical to think that this would happen, but it's interesting to see that it's actually been studied and reported on. This is one more aspect of sort of the challenges that this distributed workforce is facing. This is data from Microsoft. When in November, I think it was, they launched into an extensive research program on the impacts of remote work on people and organizations. And what they saw here, and sort of the background to it, is that the youngest generation in the workplace, Gen Z, is really struggling over this past year. And what they found was contributing to that is that they have not had that. Remember, we talked about talent growth and mentorship. They haven't established those relationships with their teams, their cohort of new employees, and the rest. And part of that social connection builds trust. And one of the things that trust does is allows people to take risks and bring new ideas to the table. And what this is saying is that Gen Z, not feeling engaged, not feeling that trust and relationship, and not bringing new ideas to the table. So we want to make sure this generation isn't lost as we go forward.
So also too, when we're thinking about working from home and those patterns, and then also how often are we coming into the office, we want to look at what actually happened. So this is a study by George Washington University and Cushman and Wakefield called The Workplace Ecosystems of the Future, and they examined what the future office will look like in a post-COVID-19 world. So this study shows us that the new normal, where we are allowed to come into the office when we choose, reduces our collaboration by up to the chance of that 50% of the team in the office together is significantly reduced. So how does this impact how we manage our time? I don't know how you guys have been working, but I have been blocking out my time considerably. And this is becoming increasingly important. How will you know when you need to go into the office? Why will you go into the office? So this new normal that we have is striking a balance between remote and in-office work. And do we go into the office to collaborate, innovate, and stay connected, reinforce employee culture? And how can we do that when we have less people in the office at the same time? So what this means is that we need to ensure that the office becomes a magnet, that people want to be there, that it supports employee interaction, engagement, and satisfaction. And the environment needs to be vibrant, active. It needs to be a placemaker, what we would call a placemaker, that enhances the employee experience, and which ultimately results in a profitable result for organizations. This cannot be replaced with remote work.
So we need to identify what the workplaces of the future are going to be looking like and designed like, because we need to have these workplaces designed to encourage employees to want to be in this space. They need to be different from what the employee would be experiencing at home. So if you were to look, this is an example of the office that I work in at PSPC in Edmonton and Canada Place as an example. If you didn't know that you were in a building that's 16 stories high, that's the flagship of the Government of Canada offices in Edmonton, and you would look into this office, you go, this is not a government office. And this design was done in consultation with employees and with our partner consultants at Stantec to develop an office that met the needs of the people that were in it. We were able to use this office for 6 months before pandemic hit, and then we were all sent scattering home. So we're anxious to get back into this workplace and use it. So if you were to ride the elevator in Canada Place and see us on the 10th floor, you would go, this is not your typical government office. And I think I've had the opportunity to see a number of GC workplace fit ups across the country, been involved in 3 or 4 of them here in my own region. And they're all unique in their own right. They all have design elements that are unique and different to meet the needs. But I don't think I've seen a design as bold in terms of color and engaging atmosphere that I have in our Edmonton office. I think it makes you want to come into the space. And I've worked with designers in the past that have said, you know, a can of orange paint costs the same as a can of gray paint. A dynamic carpet tile costs the same as a plain old beige carpet tile. So why are we afraid as the Government of Canada to take risks in our design elements? We know we have the check marks and checks and balances in place to make sure that we're using taxpayers' dollars effectively in projects like this, but that doesn't mean that we can't be bold and creative in our design. And so that's the trigger, is to get people back into the office and create these spaces.
I just saw in the comment, what, no more institutional beige? So this is a case study. This is the same project, just a couple other images. You guys have seen so far, the images that you have seen were from the same project. So just wanted to give a little case study on this, background on what we did for the project. So Chris and I actually worked together on this project, and it began as a Workplace 2.0 endeavor. And shortly after the project started, national headquarters asked if Chris and his team wanted to reimagine this project as an activity-based workplace. So we were all very excited. This made sense to us, not only as designers, but as taxpayers, because it's been proven that the physical environment plays a meaningful role in how people feel about their work. So when PSPC was looking to invest in their space, culture, and rethink how they use technology, we were very supportive of this endeavor. So what's activity-based work, for all those that don't know? It's a way of working that encourages teams to connect, allowing individuals to flourish and organizations to thrive. So the concept recognizes that through the course of any given day, whatever your activity needs, there's a workspace that might support that in the same fashion. You can choose where you want to work throughout the day. So this project was a bit of a far reach from Workplace 2.0. We did incorporate a lot of additional color, and we pushed those boundaries with Chris and his whole team, I'd say. But we began with the project derailed a little bit from just a standard fit up to a functional program. So we took 9 months to do functional programming with their group. And through that process of discovery, we learned lots about all of his colleagues and how they work and what their fears were. And the more we learned about them, the more we were able to say, okay, you guys are asking for this design, you want this design. And so that was a really fun project to work on with them. So
and I have to say too, that like one of the images here is the top images of our kitchen. You'll find this to be one of the most sought out places to work for a quiet heads down area outside of the hours of 11 to 1. But you'll quite often see people working in this area because it is quiet, it's walled off, but it's still a communal place to work.
Yeah, and so even you can see those little black boxes on the back wall. People can plug in their cell phones. So we're thinking about how technology incorporates with space for the long term. I also want to say that we were quite honored as the first activity-based workplace within the federal government. We were quite honored to help inform the foundation for the GC Workplace Guidelines, now known as GC Workplace. So that was a pretty cool thing to be a part of.
So as we've talked about, now is the time to start engaging our employees and engaging in those conversations, because we know, like the slide says, one size does not fit all. This is not a GC, this is not a Workplace 2.0 concept. This is not a put it into the Space app and it'll tell you how many workstations you get and how much collaboration space you get. This is where we need to do that engagement and figure out how employees are working and creating that flexibility. Our space that we've talked about was designed pre-pandemic with probably about a 60-40 split of desking to collaboration space. If we were to redesign that office now post-pandemic, I would see that split going the other way around, even more collaboration space and less desking options, because we need to look at the workplace as an opportunity to come together and use those spaces differently.
Sorry. So we have a little slide for you guys again. I pressed forward too quickly, but please go back to your phones. We want to ask you now, since we've been working from home for so long, what's the impact of returning to the office? So I'll just open up that slide quickly and get us there. So we want to know what your point of view is, and then also what's your employer's point of view in regards to team effectiveness and individual effectiveness. So if you guys can just take a couple moments, we'll come back to this. And we're going to speak to quickly individual effectiveness now. So prior to the pandemic, we all thought we were more effective working from home as there were less distractions. Having that flexibility and choice has been beneficial to our work-life balance, or so we think. But the negative impacts of the isolation and the erosion of social interactions has taken its toll and caused many challenges. So what we might need to do is look at our organizational leaders to define shared goals and rewards. Why? Because when teams share a combined vision that complements a larger degree of autonomy that we've experienced through the pandemic, a combined vision can encourage employees to come back to the office and collaborate. So this is something we need to honor the autonomy. Everybody loves the autonomy that they've experienced, but we need to draw them back. We need the workplace to draw them back. We need combined shared vision and goals to draw them back. Encourage that teamwork and don't leave it to chance.
So I think that a lot of people find this a pretty interesting, what would I say, reinforcement or validation of what we have felt over the past year, meetings. So this is another Microsoft data point where they took a look at the traffic through Teams and meetings that were set, IMs, chats that were sent, and you'll see that starting in March, the number of minutes in a day that we spend in a Teams meeting has over doubled. So if you feel like you're always in a meeting online, you are. And the interesting thing about that, when we talk about our individual effectiveness, you know, we said we have our individual responsibilities as well as these team collaborative things. We only have so many minutes in a day. And so the ability to get our work done, the time to do that is being squished. And so some of that separation of work life that balance that we're seeking, it's really being threatened. the line on the yellow on the bottom, the idea that I can go away from the office environment and remove myself from distraction and do this focused work, that's also being challenged because we're all on Teams and those digital tools, and the ability to break through and I am somebody and interrupt them because you don't have that visual cue that they've kind of isolated themselves or their heads down and they don't want to be interrupted. So a little bit of technology helping bridge the gap, but also technology breaking in and taking away some of that focus that we're looking for. And this one's interesting. You know, we've long talked about how supporting employee wellness is good for effectiveness and contribution. And what this is showing, so along with looking at data streams, Microsoft also took study subjects, put encephalographs on their head, and looked at what happened to their brain function in these back-to-back meetings. And what you'll see is after meeting 1, back to 2 to 3, literally we're heating up. It's stressful. And we reach a point where our cognitive function actually, we kind of hit this middle road where we have to kind of tune out, where you see meeting 4. That nice, cool, calm blue in the bottom is the other set of test subjects who had the white space between the meetings. They weren't constantly engaged with this digital tool. So we can see that, again, balance is really important. These tools are effective, they're valuable, but they don't replace what it takes for our human condition. And the next one really also is showing that although where there's a general consensus that we've been successful in the past year, that remote work works. And gosh, I think that sometimes people are a little afraid to talk about the chinks in the armor because we don't want to lose what we've, the benefits that we have received. But the key is that it actually hasn't been equitable. It hasn't been as good an experience for some as others. Who has actually thrived are those who are business leaders. They have an established career already. And data-wise, they are predominantly male. If we look at the other end of the spectrum, we've got those who have barely survived, survive, and they tend to, again, be younger, single, and particularly those working moms. And again, I think there was something of an assumption that the younger generation, who are those digital natives, would have the least challenge with this. And it turns out, just to reinforce that our young and upcoming employees and talent resource pool, they've struggled the most. In many cases, they don't have the setting at home to be, to separate work from life. And it's very important to realize that along with collaboration and being together for community, that workplace, that office can actually be a very valuable tool for individual effectiveness as well.
I think it's important that we also remember that remote work just becomes another venue in which to perform the tasks that you have. So again, going back to what I was talking about earlier, we need to make that office and that workplace a destination where employees want to go to complete tasks. So it comes back into that time blocking that we've mentioned before as well, around what tasks am I undertaking today will determine where it is that I need to do that work. So if I need to collaborate, I'm not doing it really effectively from my kitchen table. I want to be in the office doing that work. If I need some heads down work and I know that my remote location is that quiet heads down space, then that's where I'm going to do that type of work. So we just need to factor in the workplace and the remote work sites as an option from where we can do to complete the tasks that we have on our plates in front of us.
Yeah. So it looks like our respondees to our survey are saying the same thing, that's the impact of returning to the work, team effectiveness and individual effectiveness. So
great.
Thanks everybody for that. So moving on to the future office, let us consider what that looks like.
So going back to that Blue Sky survey, we asked people, what's your level of satisfaction with the workplace that you have today? And we know that workplace satisfaction has a lot of value in terms of talent attraction, retention, and actually engagement and contribution. what was interesting was to correlate that. How happy are you? And by the way, describe for us how you think the space in your workplace is allocated. Is it primarily individual work points, desks? Is it collaboration space, or is it amenities? Some of those third places to get work done or to gather and socialize. So those who were the most happy saw a real balance, an assortment of resources for them in their workplace. And those who were the most unsatisfied said that, you know, really, it's just a place, it's a bunch of desks, it's a place I come to get my work done, and it doesn't offer the other attributes that I really need for satisfaction.
Okay.
So when we think about, you know, how do we I'm thinking about the chart that we showed you, that one size doesn't fit all. We've got many different ways of working within an organization, within sectors, in the industry sectors, but everyone is looking at change. And law firms who have traditionally been the most traditional and the most reticent to change. This is a case study from one where they're looking at their new future office space and what do they need? And they realize that the role of the individual office, even for lawyers, has changed significantly. So we've got also not only a right sizing of the space, but a decrease in the number of offices and an increase in the amount of support spaces. Just like we said, those amenities, those third places, recognizing that it's not just the place where you work. And overall, a decrease in square footage, but a rebalancing and reallocation of that space. And they adopted 2-to-1 workstation sharing ratios. And like I said, the right sizing of individual office spaces.
So not the same law firm, but our Edmonton's Interior Group worked on this project in the Stantec Tower. They're a tenant there with us. So just wanted to share some interesting information through this renovation. So they came to us, they wanted to modernize their workplace and make sure that it was more human-centered. Most of their staff in their previous office were located within offices, allowing little natural light to get to the support staff that were working at their desks in the center of the building. So our Edmonton design team developed a district concept, which was focused on natural light as the driver for defining space. But the result of having the driver for natural light to define the space was that staff started to be located off the walls. All corner offices were now dedicated to shared space. So there was an increase in shared space and then centralized use space. They did increase their shared space to the canteen area, which you can see up in this top photo. They had more interconnected space so that the second floor was connected to the first floor. And the canteen area actually had 2 adjacent boardrooms and a lawyer's lounge. So this is sort of the lawyer's lounge that would open up so that they could have a great large event space too. So the result was a dedicated team space and a more flexible modern floor plan that gave them what they needed.
Sonia, I'm looking at the time that we have left, and I'm wondering if we skip forward to, you know, the future slide and just show people a look at how this reallocation of space might start to take shape.
This one.
Oh, I was thinking the pano, but
oh, okay, yeah, let's look at this one. So these are the possibilities. So this is it'll just take a second to load here, guys. So this is just a 3D model that we're going to walk you through. So this would be the canteen here that you can see in the center. So this is a place, a hub for eating. And then over here, we can walk through to this enclosed area, which we might call this a focus room, a team room. So this could potentially be a team where people are coming to work together on a project, or maybe they're working individually, and there's a myriad of type of spaces that people can use. And then of course, tech supported, highly tech supported. So walking, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, we've had clients talk about creating those spaces where rather than hoteling or reserving a desk, your team actually reserves that team space to come together for a focused sprint of work or a deliverable.
So And that's it. We are creating dynamic spaces that are bookable, and then some are non-bookable, like this one. It would just be another sort of teaming area, but more of an open collaborative area where you don't require as much privacy. So lots of dynamic spaces that we've enjoyed creating for you guys. So going back to the presentation with just 1 minute left, let's talk about the reimagined workplace. We'll skip over a couple of slides.
I think really the key, and I hope you've gotten the message here, is that we're no longer just creating that place to work. We're creating an environment, an experience, recognizing the value of being together, and that Pandora's box is open, and nobody wants to be forced back into that box. So how do we create those environments, those experiences that really fulfill the greater human experience?
That's great. Thank you so much, Mary and Sonia and Chris. I just have one question for you before we wrap up, if we've got time. I know we're kind of right at capacity, but one of the questions that kind of came in that sparked an idea here was, as we're moving to sort of a hybrid environment, there still remains some restrictions in terms of how many folks can fit in a boardroom and how many people can be at the office at the time. And with an eye on collaboration, I'm wondering if anybody has any ideas on how we can maintain sort of an environment of collaboration and kind of do those like whiteboarding strategy sessions where some folks are in person in office and others are virtual. I know from my personal experience, it's kind of clunky and awkward when you're trying to address people on camera, but you have people in front of you at a boardroom table. And I'm wondering if you guys have any ideas as we move into this environment more permanently, how to address that.
Well, I think I'll jump in quickly with an example of how we've done that within our department. We're regionally dispersed. And so we worked like this pre-pandemic, people in the room and people on the screen. And the pandemic has put us all on the level playing field of being everyone out there working individually and remotely. So we need to figure out the ways that we've done or identify the ways that we've engaged people remotely and continue that into the workplace. We're going to have people in the room. We're going to have people on screen. And so we need to leverage technology that we can use a whiteboard in the room, but that whiteboard is captured on screen for individuals. We need to make sure that we're constantly connecting with the people on the screen so that they don't feel that there's a meeting going on inside the meeting and that they are part of that team. And so it takes some concentrated effort, but we've learned to do that by making sure we go around the screen right now and make sure everyone's had their opportunity to contribute. We need to continue to do that going forward. I don't know if Mary wanted to add something to that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think that what you were saying in terms of there's etiquettes that we definitely need to learn and take forward with us. But you saw in some of those charts that showed, and even our own Mentimeter, digital tools is going to be huge. And I think that people will look at these projects and really realize how important the investment in the right tools is going to be to make this new hybrid work successful. And just like cameras that show the whiteboard, there is technology out there that, it's a shared whiteboarding experience, so that as I'm on this side of the screen and they're in the room, I can touch the screen and they see it on the screen in the meeting. And those people can also come up and engage with that surface so that it's right there. And this idea of remote equity is a huge conversation in design and IT right now.
That's great. Thank you.
Just saw a comment in the chat there. This is a take on Maslow. Yes, this is a
yes, very much so.
We didn't get to that part.
It's a riff. I didn't come up with it. But we really are looking at the idea that experience that we create in those environments is going to have absolute positive impact for organizational outcomes.
Yeah, that's great. Well, listen, I wanted to say thank you to all three of you. I've noticed the number of participants in this conversation has increased through the presentation. So it's you guys have had a really interesting presentation. I've really enjoyed everything that's been talked about today. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope everybody feels free to reach out to you after if they have any additional questions.
Please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Sonia.